so somehow we want to take all of that and incorporate it into our Christian worldview. Leave the space for the mystery, leave the space for the sorrow and the pain that comes with suffering. But at the same time, that whole passage in John 15 that I'm talking about, Jesus is telling us to abide.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Epic Everyday, our weekday podcast for busy, stressed out Christians who don't want to just survive.
You always go way down into that.
I know,
Does that relax
because
you?
that's how I feel, is like when I think about just surviving, it makes me tired.
Yeah, it's too much work. God's can carry us to broader field pastures than that.
I'm Liz Frerichs, and this is my husband, Evan.
Hi there.
And we're so glad you guys are here with us today on Friday. Woohoo! I don't think I'm ever going to be able to pull that off.
I want to hear a real cowboy whoop whoop one of these Mondays, because that's the day you're really excited about.
Yeah, well, maybe it'll happen. I guess we'll see. So, since it's Friday, we're talking about being complete. And being complete is when you are not fragmented, so you're fully yourself, using your entire self in everything that you do. Fully present, you're not stuck on the worry-regret spectrums, you're not in the past or the future. And you're also fully engaged with what's actually happening rather than living in some fairy tale.
Yeah, we can construct any number of fairy tales.
Right, it can be a really bad fairy tale.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that it's like a happily ever after kind of fairy tale. It might be like everything's bad and it's always gonna be bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Suffering can really do that to us. I mean, we often on Fridays will talk about worry, regret, which I think you just mentioned. But today I think we're going to go more into this fantasy world where we tend to construct this kind of bizarre, unbiblical kind of worldview. You know, non-Christians will do that, but even Christians, you know, I think we've been hitting around this phrase all week, but we've never actually said it. You know, this classic.
Well, we're talking about suffering this week.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. And so when we talk about suffering, people will often ask, why do bad things happen to good people? And I think, you know, on Tuesday we talked about what are the initials? More shift, but what's?
The GE more shift.
The GE more shift. And we kind of flipped part of this equation on its head. And I think we as Christians got to do that to fully understand the world that God has created and put us in.
Right, to understand that there's no such thing as suffering that's wasted. Like God's redeeming all of it, every single part of it. So it's not meaningless.
Yeah. And this
doesn't mean it's not painful.
That's right.
And I think that's really what people mean when they say, why do bad things happen to good people? They mean like hard, painful, you know?
Yeah, what's
evil
perceived as a hurt,
but,
a damage somehow.
Right.
Like for no reason, this good person is getting damaged.
Okay. I have a problem with that.
Okay.
Because honestly, some things are, I mean, you talk about somebody getting raped. There's no reason that it happened to them. They did nothing to cause it from happening or to cause it to happen.
Yeah.
So saying like, right, it shouldn't happen. But saying that like, oh, these people, they just think it comes out of nowhere.
No.
And it,
Wow.
So where are you going?
Well, I wasn't trying to downplay anybody's suffering.
Okay.
But we do want to, I mean, what are we talking about here? We're saying bad things. So we're putting a value judgment on the thing.
Right.
A rape, it is a bad thing. Mm-hmm. You stub your toe, I don't know. So we need to qualify what we're talking about.
Right.
And then good people, that's an assumption there as well. I mean,
yeah.
We want to think that all people are good, but we know the Bible says that we have evil in our heart.
Right.
And we bring sorrow upon ourselves through our sin.
Yes.
So I'm just saying we need to think about what we're talking about and be intentional before we just throw around a phrase that we think clenches a debate of some kind or makes someone uncomfortable or minimizes someone's suffering. We don't want to do any of those things.
I agree. And it is hard when you have everything lumped together. Like when you lump together someone dying from cancer and somebody, you know, genocide in a different country and I broke my arm last week.
Yeah, or hitting a red light.
Right. Like there's such a spectrum where it's like, okay. And some of it is we're trying to compare apples and oranges and that just doesn't work.
Yeah. So like you and I just did. I mean, I was thinking of something and you were thinking of something very specific, of a direct injustice and a violation.
Right.
And those need to be approached totally differently. When we meet a brother or a sister who's suffering, we talked about that yesterday, I think, having empathy and sympathy for their situation and not just being like, "Pfft," or I mean, that might have been Wednesday, but anyway, like not writing off someone's experience because either you think you've suffered worse or whatever they're going through is not that bad, or
Right.
God somehow just magically is going to make it okay. So hang in there and don't even worry about it.
Right. We have to stay present with the like, this is uncomfortable, this is painful, and we don't understand. Like, and when you look at the book of Job, which is one of the main passages that I think people go to for suffering, there was never any explanation.
Yeah, like, Job never found out what was going on.
God was just like, I am God. And Job was like, you're right. And then that was the end. Well, then God re-blessed him and gave him all this stuff. And we know that it was Satan who was, taking away those different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but it was God that was like, hey.
Yeah, that whole book is dialogue, and I just recently read it, and it's just like, makes your head spin. But when God finally shows up and starts talking, Job's used to giving these 1 or 2 chapter long responses to all of his friends, and he has all this stuff to say. And the little thing he says in response to God finally is just like, you're right, you're God. I'm not. Who am I? I'm just a man.
Right.
That's kind of it. And you're just like, wow. And he didn't get an explanation.
Right.
And I think we need to, we're never going to really be okay with that. We want an explanation, but we need our faith to be stronger than a desire for an explanation.
Well, and that goes back to who is God? Because when we start with that, we say, okay, this is how God has worked in the world in general, the fact that he's holding everyone's molecules together, that Jesus died for everyone, that he's redeemed you and redeemed me. And there's so many different things God's done in my life. When we hang on to those things to build our faith and then move out of that place, we have room in our worldview then to say, well, I don't understand this. And yeah, it totally sucks. But I'm going to still believe that God's faithful and that he's doing something here.
And I think part of that is going to be no longer denying the important role of suffering in our faith walk. Somehow it's an important tool. It's a thing that all Christians and all people go through, and God is redeeming it every day. We had a pretty amazing sermon about that at church back on the 11th of March. We're talking about John 15, talking about God is personified there as the vine dresser. Mm-hmm. And the vine dresser is taking care of the vine, and the goal is to make good grapes. And it says there that he cuts off the branches without fruit, but he also prunes the branches bearing fruit so that they may bear more. And so the righteous and the unrighteous are being cut here. And suffering is often that knife, the pastor said. And we don't understand that.
Nope.
But there's a goal in mind. The vine dresser is doing something. He's getting rid of dead branches and making live branches flourish somehow through suffering. Yeah. I don't understand that.
I don't either. But we also know that God, it says that, I think it's in 2 Peter, where they're talking about how, why hasn't Jesus come back sooner? And Peter says that it's because God is patient, that he's unwilling for any to perish. And I think when you recognize that God's patience is keeping him from redeeming everything right now, like he's allowing sin to continue, because the moment that he's like, all right, the doors are closed, nobody else is getting in.
And the lost are lost forever at that point.
Right. So there's still time for people to choose Jesus.
Yeah. And so in a bizarre way, suffering is hand in hand with grace and mercy.
Yeah.
Because the longer we endure the world, the more souls can be saved.
Right.
When I was thinking about what that vine dresser is doing with those vines, it's for the vine dresser's glory and for the benefit of the branches. And those are great reasons for God to do something.
Yeah, it's just hard when we're in the middle of it to be like, okay, yep, he's still working. I don't see how this is good, but I'm going to believe that it's good. And like I said, I think the more things you have under your belt where you've gone through something and you've been like, Lord, I don't see how this is good. And then you've prayed for God to show you how it's good. And later on it turns into something awesome. you can be like, oh, okay, right. He worked in this and this and this and this and this. Okay, I can trust him in this one.
And so somehow we want to take all of that and incorporate it into our Christian worldview. Leave the space for the mystery. Leave the space for the sorrow and the pain that comes with suffering. But at the same time, that whole passage in John 15 that I'm talking about, Jesus is telling us to abide and be one of the branches that get pruned and not cut off, because then we'll thrive. That's the CSCs, I think. We spend every day on this show trying to talk about ways we can do just that.
Yeah.
Because that's our only hope for a peaceful, abundant life and our eternal hope in the life after. I'm glad we got to talk about this week. It's a heavy topic, but I think we could all do well to meditate. I think it enlarges our heart somehow. Peter Cesaro talks about sorrow enlarging our heart, and somehow that's a grace as well.
Well, hopefully that gives us all some stuff to think about. This is a hard topic, but it is helpful to just continually be reminded that whatever difficult thing we're going through, it's on purpose. It's not willy-nilly. It's not like the Lord forgot or fell asleep or it was outside of his control or any of that. He's doing it for a reason.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that our faith needs to hang on to. It's not meaningless, and it's not eternal.
Yes. Thank the good Lord.
But the not meaningless thing is such a nugget of truth for me.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to not, we don't understand. And so then it's easy for us to think, well, then it must be meaningless.
I was just thinking about sometimes our kids will do something and I'm like, no, I told you to do it a different way, because it's like some mess or something where it feels like a problem.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, I didn't think it really mattered how I did it. I was doing it. And I'm like, no, this is the reason why I told you to do it this way, because the process itself changes the outcome.
And sometimes we're just like that. We try hard to let our kids fail when they're children now. And so sometimes we have to bite our tongue and not say that let the milk explode or whatever it is so that they can learn by doing, because that's a very good teacher. And God treats us very similarly, I think. Yeah. Letting us fail, feeling that pain, and then coming back to him and abiding.
We love you guys and we're praying for you. Pick whether today is going to be awesome. I know all you Friday lovers will not have a hard time picking that it's awesome, but for those of us who are like, oh,
Monday's around the corner, you guys. It'll be all right.
We can pick that today will still be awesome.
That's right.
Thanks to everybody that's been sharing the show and listening to the show. We really appreciate it. If you have found this podcast helpful, please do continue to share it. And if you haven't signed up for our email newsletter, go do that, because we send out here's all the stuff that you missed and previews of the next week, as well as some fun goodies.
We'd love to hear from you and be in touch.
All right. Have an awesome Friday.
See you later.